Step into the realm of the unexplained with Paranormal M. Hit that subscribe button and enable notifications to stay connected to our latest stories that will ignite your imagination. Get ready for a journey like no other. Child Shadow Figure. Columbus, Ohio. About 3 years ago, I moved in with my girlfriend, and now fiancé. It took a couple of months to really settle in and feel comfortable. But when I did, I started noticing things. We have a third bedroom that has a bed in it, and the dog has pretty much commandeered that room for her own liking. Our bedroom door doesn't really fully close because the strike plate is a bit off-center, but we like it that way, so we can hear things downstairs. At night, I started to get a feeling like something was watching me through the crack in the door. My body would get the chills, and that uneasy feeling would come over me that I need to fight or run. This happened about once a week or so. One night I was in bed, and I had to use the restroom. On the way across the hall, I noticed the dog was not in her room, but instead, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow figure of a child, standing just past the doorway. It was more like a 4-foot black mass that had some resemblance of a child. No features. I could feel its presence too, like when I would feel like I'm being watched through the bedroom door. I did a double take, but it was gone. I started to see this shadow figure almost every time I walked to the restroom. It freaked me out, especially when you aren't expecting it. It must be scaring the dog too, because she doesn't go in there at night anymore at all. My fiancé doesn't even want to talk about it because it frightens her. She's never seen this entity. We have crucifixes about every entrance to the house, and she smudged it with sage. I'm not sure that kind of thing helps, but I rolled with it. The house was built in the 1920s, and it sat vacant for 40 years, so who knows what moved in. There were 2 families here before us, and one of them left a family photo album underneath the basement stairs. The couple had 2 girls and 1 boy. The pictures looked like they were from the 70s. We threw the photo album away, and I haven't seen the shadow figure since. It's been about 9 months since I've seen it last, about the time that we found and tossed the photos. Maybe there was a connection. We did research on the home, and there's not much detailed info except for the 40-year vacancy. I don't get that uneasy feeling anymore when going across the hallway. I'm hoping it moved on. Valleydale Ballroom. 2018, Columbus, Ohio. Valleydale Ballroom. I have to give you some background, and for short, Valleydale Ballroom will be shortened to VDB. Well, the narrator's just going to say it. Valleydale Ballroom was built in the 1800s, and it was used as a stagecoach repair building, so the place is quite old. Over the years, it has flooded inside multiple times. It's because of a river that runs next to the property. In the 1920s, it was turned into a ballroom and a dance hall, and even our first radio station, where they would broadcast live music. The greats have all played there: Frank Sinatra, Glenn Miller, the Big Brass, and swing eras. The walls are lined with pictures of celebrities and old pictures of the building. The lower ballroom has a kitchen in the back, bar, and a huge wood dance floor. The upstairs had a balcony that ringed the entire building, about 12 feet wide, and another bar, and through a doorway was a woman's dressing room with mirrors and an old-fashioned round light bulb lining them with stools in the front. In 2018, the Valleydale Ballroom floods again, and I'm working for a small construction company that's repairing the damage to the walls, the floors, and even the dance floor. A lot of the times I was there by myself, and I never really felt comfortable. I would see dark figures dart around corners and hear conversations being had at the upstairs bar. And this is while I'm working on fixing the dance floor. You can't make out what's being said in the conversations at the bar, but it sounds like 2 or 3 people mumbling with muffled words. My tools that I were using would sometimes be in a place that I wouldn't put them. For example, a pair of pliers that I was using 5 minutes ago on the dance floor were found on the balcony upstairs in the middle of the floor. Dishes could be heard clanging in the kitchen, and there were no dishes at this point. So I'm pretty convinced that the place is haunted. When you know, you know. It's the hair raising on your arms, the panicked feeling, scared, and all you want to do is step outside before working up the nerve to go back in. My best friend worked with me. I'm telling him all about what I'm witnessing in the Valleydale ballroom, and of course, he thinks I'm nuts, being a skeptic and all. So one day, me and the boss go to the hardware store, leaving my friend to work alone in the woman's dressing room upstairs. The floorboards needed replaced, and he started tearing them up when we left to go get materials. When we came back, we find him standing in the parking lot, cussing and walking back and forth frantically. I asked him what happened. He proceeded to tell me that when he was working, he thought he heard us come back and walk upstairs. He called out a few times and no one answered. When he looked up, he saw someone or something walk past the mirror in front of him. He called out again, but no answer. He looked up once more, noticing movement behind him in the mirror. This time he saw it. He said it was a black void the shape of a person with a fuzzy outline. He freaked out and screamed, but when he turned around, no one was there. He noped out of that place as fast as he could and never went back inside. He was so mentally distraught that we stopped working for that entire day and went home. It freaked us all out. I believe him considering my experiences at Valleydale Ballroom. And if you live in Columbus, go check the place out. They still have weddings and school dances there. But if you're there alone, it's a completely different feeling of the place lost in history and spirits revisiting the good old days. It feels playful, curious, and a little bit sinister all at the same time. I'm sure I saw something this night. So I was watching the night sky at around 1 a.m., just observing and feeling aligned with the universe, and sending love to whoever might be out there. Then I said, just in my head, something like, "Please, can I see the truth? Could something just be shown just to me?" Right the second after, a star has fallen straight in front of me, and when the tail of it faded, another light source sort of popped out of nowhere, right above where the star, or meteorite, fell. It was a round, constant yellowish light, flying obliquely to the right. Firstly, I thought it was just a faster plane, but it didn't emit any other lights just like planes do, and I could tell that it was rather different kind of light than from planes as well. But mainly, planes are flying straight, right? Well, this thing was moving in one direction, but it was kind of hovering from side to side, up and down, like if you had a sparkler in your hand and tried to make a line in the air with it, but your hands were a bit shaky. A drone, maybe, I thought. But it flew behind the clouds, which were over the horizon and pretty high up. Also, the distance that it covered must have been long. I find it pretty funny that my first experience with a possible ET has happened only just yesterday. When I went to bed after that, I also felt something that I'd never felt before. Mainly in my head, I felt pressure, but very light. I felt kind of like being healed. Not just my forehead, but like my whole brain was soaked in warm, loving juice. I don't know, but the whole evening was pretty surreal. The Hat Man. Basically, like 2 years ago, I was at my girlfriend's house. There's a hallway which ends with a bathroom on one end, the other end is my girlfriend's room and her sister's room. We were just chilling in the bed, and I said that I have to go to the bathroom. It was dark outside, I believe, but there were several light sources, as I remembered that I had a pretty clear view. Right at the closing doors, some black figure entering the bathroom. It really seemed like he had a hat and a cloak. But hey, I'm not crazy, right? Thought that I just badly saw my girlfriend's sister. So I returned to the bed, and after like a minute, my girlfriend was on the phone and not really paying attention and said something like, why I didn't go to the toilet. I answered, obviously because your sister went in. Then I felt like I was in a classic horror movie. As she replied, but my sister isn't home at the moment. Nobody is except us. It hit me really hard. I clearly know what I saw, I swear. I was totally freaked out. And that peeing was one of the worst and fastest ever. When I really had to afterwards. Luckily nothing happened though. Until a year later. It was a bright day and warm outside. I was waiting for one of my best friends at the moment in front of his flat. He lives in a block at like the 7th floor. Each floor has a big hall with an elevator, and then a small side one with a balcony divided by stairs. I was in the small one, expecting to hear him and jump at him or some shit, I don't know. But I've waited and he's still nowhere. So I decided to sneak on him through the doors with my ears. But as I turned, I could see the floor underneath, through the space between the stairs. And I saw a black cloaked figure entering the elevator, right as the door slammed. Which, the sound I clearly heard too. Again, I thought to myself that I only dreamed that, and waited in front of his doors. Only to hear the sound of the elevator opening beside me, and his, "The fuck you doing here?" I tried to tell him what I just witnessed, but both of them were saying that I'm just going nuts. But I know what I've seen. I did a bit of research, and I know that this figure shows up in people's dreams, sleep paralysis and things like that. But I'd love to know if some one of you guys have had a similar life experience. I've even heard that people often see this figure when they were having bad energy or something bad going on, which at the time, with both of them, kinda did. Both of the situations were pretty similar, and in both of them, I just felt like my whole world is cracking when they revealed what's going on. Something weird happened at my kid's pediatrician's office. Please convince me I'm just crazy. So for a bit of backstory, I grew up in an extremely haunted house for 17 years. No one will ever convince me that that house wasn't haunted, or that paranormal experiences always have a quote-unquote logical explanation. Always having a logical explanation is not really my own truth. In the past year or so, there have been a few questionable things that have happened in that house, and the one that I live in now. Mostly just things flying off specific tables in a specific dresser. But anyway, I took my youngest son to the doctor's a few weeks ago. We're in the waiting room waiting for the doctor to come in, and I'm standing there holding my son, singing to him. There's a counter with glass jars filled with cotton balls and tongue depressors with metal lids, you know the ones. And one lid was off the jar and sitting on the counter. At some point, I noticed some sort of movement in my peripheral vision, and when I look at the counter, the metal lid is slowly moving by itself. It moved about 5 or 6 inches across the counter right before my fucking eyes. Kinda froze for a minute, wondering if it actually happened or if I'm just crazy. And then I picked the lid up to make sure there wasn't a big bug underneath it or something. By the way, there wasn't. And then the doctor came in, and I pretended nothing happened, of course, and we just left. The really weird thing is that when I first looked and saw the lid slowly sliding across the counter, it took me a second to even realize something was wrong and it shouldn't be moving. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible that it somehow is just in my head, but I really do not think so. There were no vibrations, at least that I could feel, or anything like that. There was a sink next to it, so I would assume pipes. And I thought maybe someone used one of the sinks in the room next to mine and it made it move. I just don't know because I'm like 5 or 6 inches is a lot for something like that to move by itself. My house is haunted and I need help. So my family built a house back in 2014 in a rural area, and ever since we moved, we've all experienced paranormal activity. I was in 6th grade when we moved into the house. I'm a senior now. And as soon as we moved in, I felt depressed. At first, I thought it was just hormonal puberty stuff. But every time I left the house, it felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. My dad was very angry all of the time, and my mom seemed absent every time that I would talk to her. Skip ahead a few years to my sophomore year. It was March, right around spring break. We have old cars, and my dad just bought a 1956 Pontiac, and I saw a little girl sitting in the back seat. She was sitting on the right side, facing away from me. Then she turned and looked back at me with a blank expression. As soon as she looked at me, I ran inside and told my mom. She believes in paranormal activity, but she didn't like what I was saying, that we had a ghost. I brushed it off as my imagination, and I didn't really think about it. Until I saw the little girl coming down the stairs into the living room. I was on the couch watching some sitcom at 2 a.m. I had a lamp on next to me, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement on the stairs. I thought it was my dog coming downstairs, but I have 2 Maltese, and they're tiny. Whatever was making this movement was large. I looked over and saw the little girl walking down the stairs and vanish when she got to the bottom. I started joking with my friends that I have a ghost named Sally, so that's what I call her now. Then, there were little things like doors shutting and opening, things going missing and showing up in random places, footsteps at 4 a.m., things falling off flat surfaces, laptops just turning on their own, and cold spots. Our dogs always go to the master bedroom and bark and growl at nothing. Every time I'm in my parents' room, I hear a small clicking noise, like someone is clicking their tongue. My mom denied our house was haunted until she was sleeping one night and felt an arm around her waist. She thought it was my dad coming to bed, but she turned over and saw a small indentation in the bed. Lots of just weird stuff keeps happening, and we've learned to ignore it because it never felt bad or evil. My breaking point was last night. I had a friend over and she was spending the night. We were watching Harry Potter and doing it, and all of a sudden, the smoke alarm starts going off at 12:09 a.m. I thought it was because I had just blown a candle out, so I fanned the alarm and it stopped. All things good, right? Wrong. A few minutes later, all the alarms in the house start going off. I run downstairs to ask my mom what to do, and she said, try changing the battery. So that's what I did. It was fine and working, so we went to bed. Then it went off again at 3:53 a.m. We didn't do anything, we just waited for it to stop. All day today, it didn't go off until 12:09 a.m. It went off for a few minutes, then stopped. I'm writing this at 2 a.m., waiting for 3:53 a.m. to see if it happens again. Ghost experience while living in Texas. This takes place between 2019 and 2021 when I was living in Texas. Me and my wife had moved from our apartment to a 4-bedroom house with 2 baths, and we were renting. One weekend I got a few friends to help me move furniture, and every time we would come back with a load, a stuffed animal my wife had would be on the floor, and I would put it back. I kind of shook it off. Fast forward a few weeks after being moved in, and I was in the bathroom and I could hear the door open and footsteps in the living room. I pinched off and ran in there. Nothing. And my wife's little dog was just snoozing. He always barks at everything, so I thought it was weird. This would happen a few times. Fast forward a few months and my son is born. We had set up a camera in my son's room and a monitor in ours. Once again, I'm home alone folding clothes, and my wife's in the bedroom and I can hear the crib rattling, and I see his sheets moving. My son was with my in-laws at their house. I run in there and nothing, and I again hear it 30 minutes later, still nothing. Over months, I would have random occurrences like that. My wife said that she would also hear things when she was home alone. One night, I was doing dishes, and she was in the master bathroom brushing her teeth. She came into the kitchen asking if I was in the room, and I said no. She then proceeded to say that she saw a shadow moving on the bedroom wall into the bathroom. Thought it was me. Fast forward another 6 months. My wife is pregnant with a second child. One night, she awakes to drawers in front of her bed being opened and sees someone that she thinks is me prop herself to yell at me. In the process, she grabs my arm because I'm laying next to her. She then realizes it's not me, and she said the figure turned to look at her and disappeared. She wakes me up and tells me, so I search the house. All the doors and windows were locked, though. On top of that, both dogs are in the living room snoozing on the floor outside the door. Both dogs bark at everything, so we continued to have experiences about once a month until we had to move for work. One weird thing I might add is that the house next to us had a total of 5 different occupants within the 2 years that we lived there. Each of the occupants would randomly just leave in the middle of night each time. And the next day, there would be a sign for a lease in the yard. So I always wonder if it was a ghost or something that was coming from their house to ours, since my experiences weren't that frequent. Yet another weird experience involving my deceased boyfriend. Today was really nice, 50-degree weather in late November, and on my day off. As such, I decided to make a drive out to Griswold, Iowa, where he's buried. The church and cemetery in which he's buried is located on Junction 71 off Highway 92. Way out there, surrounded by nothing but farmland. This church really has no business being there. It's 5 or so miles outside of Griswold, with nothing really around it to justify it being there. It's quite beautiful though, and I'm sure that he would be happy with being there. But I digress. I pulled up into the grass to park in between some trees like I usually do, as this is where most people park for funeral and interment ceremonies. The album Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd was finishing up as I shut off the car. I look into my rearview mirror above the windshield and I see a black figure quickly disappear behind a gravestone. It looked like a person standing, then quickly crouching behind it as though they realized I could see them and they wanted to hide. It was clear as day, so I investigated thinking that it might have been an actual person being sketchy. I didn't find anything. There's no way they could have ran off without me seeing them. I realized it could have been a bird or maybe a squirrel, but it looked bigger, and the action seemed intelligent. This isn't the first time I've had strange experiences in the cemetery, and certainly not the first time I've had strange experiences involving my boyfriend. Another time I drove there late at night. I had just gotten off work, and normally I wouldn't drive out there so late, but it was the 6-month anniversary of his death, and I had an extreme drive to go out there. However, as soon as I arrived and I pulled up next to his grave, I got an extremely pissed off vibe. Like someone or something really didn't want me to be there. It was so intense that I didn't even want to get out of the car. And like I said, this place is in the middle of nowhere, far away from any human civilization, save for a single house adjacent to the cemetery. There's no lighting in the cemetery, so this place is creepy and daunting as fuck at night. The only light was the moon and my headlights, casting an ominous glow onto the gravestones in front of my car. I drove an hour out there just to sit in my car scared shitless for 10 minutes. I saw my boyfriend shortly before his funeral. I lost my boyfriend a little over 3 years ago in a car accident. I won't bore you with the details, but this occurred about 2 days before his funeral, which was a bit less than a week after his death. The visitation and such took a while, since his death was technically suspicious, as he had no visible injuries externally. Turned out to be blunt force trauma to the head and chest. Anyways, I said I wouldn't bore you with all the details, so here we are. Anyway, it was 9 a.m., and I'd just gotten up to piss. I laid back down since I had no business being up that early. And within about 5 minutes, I felt something warm against my back. Thought my cat had snuck in while I was downstairs. So I rolled over to kick her out, since if I didn't, she would scratch and meow to be let out within 20 minutes and wake me up. But I rolled over and didn't see my cat. I saw him. He was lying there, pale and flawless, in his striped long-sleeve shirt that I still have to this day, and his favorite jeans. He had this blank expression on his face. He didn't look at me, he just stared at the ceiling. Almost like a corpse, morbidly enough. I was in utter shock and thought maybe his death was really just a dream like I wished it was last week. I went to lay my head on his chest, but he dissolved into thin air. My head hit the bedsheets. I just sat there wondering what in the fuck just happened before I rolled over and cried myself back to sleep. To this day, I still have no idea what it was. Weirdly enough, after his death, I started experiencing rampant sleep issues, including sleep paralysis. And I wondered if that's what it was, but looking back, I never fell asleep. I lay there for a few minutes at most, and was still fully lucid through the whole experience. Not only that, but I was able to move. I remember vividly rolling over, propping up on one elbow, and going to lay my head down on him. I don't know if I believe in the paranormal or an afterlife, but I never had experiences. And yes, there's more than one, especially like this one, until after his death. I think I have some sort of paranormal attachment to others, and they're beginning to see it. So ever since I was a kid, my mom has told me my family has a history of being able to see ghosts. Well, I think I drew the short end of the stick, because ever since I was a kid, I've always felt like I've had something attached to me. I've moved a fair bit as a child. No matter where I've lived, I've always experienced paranormal happenings. Lights coming on and off, doors slamming, seeing shadow people. I even once described my stepfather's dad to him, even though he died years before I was even a thought of being conceived. Fast forward to my adult life, and it hasn't changed at all. I have a family of my own now, and even my kids have seen things. But what's really interesting about all this is now even people who visit my home are seeing things. Here's an example. I once was home alone while the wife was at work and the kids were at school. I'm doing the normal house things, just cleaning up a bit and also taking time to get, game once all is said and done, right? I went to the kitchen to grab a drink, and in my son's room, which is towards the front of the house and also adjacent to the kitchen, I see a little boy in overalls, just standing there. Didn't acknowledge me, didn't move, just stood there. And I knew he was an entity because he was wearing a jumper with a button-down shirt and he was literally gray in color. I mean no other color. Him, his clothes, all of it gray. Shrugging it off as it wasn't the first time I've seen a spirit, I got my drink, and when I walked past again, he was gone. Fast forward 2 days later, I invited my cousin and his fiancé over for dinner with me and my wife. It was fairly uneventful, until they were getting ready to leave. My cousin's fiancé asked to use the restroom, so I pointed her in the direction that it was in, which is directly next to my son's room. He wasn't home as he had gotten my mother to watch the kids for the night so we could enjoy an adult evening. She came back from the restroom and plainly asked, "Who's that little boy in the room, just sitting on the bed? I thought your kids weren't here." To which I replied that they weren't. Her face immediately went a bit pale and she walked back to my son's room and then came running back into the kitchen saying that he was gone. Now at that point, I hadn't told anyone, not even my wife, about what I had seen, but my cousin's fiancé described the little boy I had seen perfectly, clothes and all. I then told her of my experience a couple days back. Needless to say, dinner was cut short. A week after that, I'm laying in bed with my wife and I begin to feel a burning sensation on my back. I tell my wife to see if she can see anything, and she proceeds to tell me I have 3 distinct claws, and they're scratches going down my back. They were red and clearly visible, even on my skin, and I'm an African American. I think there's a child ghost in my house, or just following me. I feel as if I don't have much evidence, but I really feel like there's something in my house, or maybe something following me. It started when I was very young. When I was a toddler, I visited a family member. Whenever I was there, I would play hide and seek. Whenever my mother asked who I was playing with, I would respond, "The boy who lives here." There was no boy who lived there. The family member who lived there had children, but they were adults and moved away. My mother thought this was weird, but to be fair, she said I was kind of a weird kid, let's just say that. Even if this was an imaginary friend or something that I might remember him with, but I really don't remember anything about it. When I was a baby, I would have this lamb plushie who would have a voice box that would say prayers. This one time, my parents put me to bed and went downstairs. After a while, they heard a voice coming from upstairs. They went to check, and the lamb plushie left my cradle and ended up in the hallway against the wall. It was saying a prayer. My parents threw it out. My father doesn't believe in ghosts, and even he doesn't have an explanation for that. After a few years, we moved away into a new house. I was maybe around 5 or 7. I was laying in bed. Through the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I looked up and saw a short figure run across the hallway, coming from my sister's room. I got up and looked around and saw nothing. My sister was still in her bed. Sometimes I feel my hair being pulled lightly, and went back and I saw nothing. Sometimes I hear whispers of my name and other things too. Just some of the experiences I witnessed when I was living in a haunted homeless shelter. My first encounter was when I was moving my stuff into a smaller room where my bedroom was. It was right next to both of the toilets, the bathroom and shower room. There was a door with a glass window and a corridor that led you upstairs to rehab. People who overcome their addictions. Through the small corridor next to the stairs was an exit door with another glass window. The building was huge. Every time when I saw through the door leading to rehab, there was always something there watching. This was probably the first month that I was living in the shelter. Nothing major happened during that time other than, me moving into a room that was smaller. So everyone had gastroenteritis. It wasn't nice. I had stomach pains, vomiting, diarrhea. I felt like shit. So one night, like 3 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I had a high temperature, chest pains, and stomach pains. So I decided to take a hot bath to help me. In the bathroom was a bath, a toilet with a small sink, and a cupboard with a boiler in it. This is important, trust me. 30 minutes in, I was relaxed. My chest pains were subsiding, and I generally feel relaxed. Then there was a knock at the door. I shouted, "There's another bathroom across the hall." Still relaxing, and 5 minutes later again, a knock. I shouted again, "There's a toilet in the shower room." Again, 5 minutes later, another knock, and I kept repeating myself. Then another knock 5 minutes in. "Will you fuck off? I'm in the fucking bath. I'm fucking ill. Go away." Went quiet for a long time. I would say around 10 minutes. Then knocking. I got up, opened the door, and no one was there. I'm like, fucking kids disturbing me when I'm fucking ill. So, 30 minutes went by, and I was ready to leave the bathroom. All of a sudden, the knocking on the door was so hard I thought the door would come off. Then the boiler room door knocked and swung open. Got my shit and left. So, there was a little living room upstairs where the bedrooms were. All the girls called it the Dove Room. Every time I would go into that room, I swear I could hear people talking and the TV on. But when I walked in, nothing. Most of the time, that room was pitch black. So all of our rooms had safety guards on the windows, and they could only be opened so much, and then there's another guard so you can't escape. Next to my room was another room. Everyone said that's the most haunted room in the building. A girl moved in, and I became friends with her. Not friends now, though. But one of the staff asked me if she was in, and I'm like, nah. She left ages ago. Why? Her face went white. Apparently, the staff tried to talk to the girl, but instead was talking to another girl saying that she left then closed it. But that girl was dead. No idea her name, but she committed suicide by jumping out of the window. She left her 6-month-old kid in the room. The next morning, they found her dead on the ground. Ever since then, she was haunting that room. There were 2 little girls, 4 and 7, that just came in. I think the mother had domestic abuse situations and had to leave. The next few days later, I was talking to my boyfriend on a call through FaceTime, and I heard the girls screaming. No one was coming, so I went to the bathroom, opened the door, and they were crying in hysterics. They both said a man was holding the door, and he wouldn't let them out. Strangely, when they said that, I looked up where the toilet was, and I saw a black figure. I grabbed the girls and took them to their mother. After a few days, I kind of forgotten about that black figure in the bathroom. So, when I was in the main hall talking to the girls, there was a new family. They had just moved in on that day. She had 3 children, 2 twins, a boy, and a girl, and they were like 5 years old and a young boy in his early teens. The little 6-year-old girl said to the other 5-year-old girl to play a game. She said, "There's another little girl who lives here. She's ill and can't get out." we sit on the floor and play catch. If you don't catch the ball, you have to hop on one leg. The thing is, though, there was only 2 little girls living in this refuge before the family arrived, and it was their first day. There were only 2 girls before then, not 3. Within the first 6 months of being there, I saw girls coming and going. It was normal since it was a shelter. I never ventured out of my room at night since the knock at the bathroom door at 3 a.m. thing. However, I was bursting for the toilet. I went out and saw a black figure saying, "Hello." It seemed pleasant, and he looked at me and he said, "Enjoying your stay, ma'am? I'm your butler." I replied, "Yeah, thanks, just using the toilet." He nodded and went through the door. I was weirded out, to say the least. Another family found a house and moved out. There was only one family left in the refuge. One day, the twins were screaming so bad the staff had to calm them down. They said in the bathroom there was a man scaring them, calling them names and holding them in the bathroom. The little girl crying her eyes out. He was naked and he had red eyes. I thought he was going to eat me. He said, and he was going to eat me. I don't want to go near that bathroom. After a while, I kind of understood why so many people didn't go to the toilet at night. The last few days of living in the refuge, there was only me and 2 other women and a child. It was pretty quiet and we were all talking in the main hall. In the main hall, there was 2 kitchens and our laundry room. Our kitchen was separated. You can only go through the kitchen to get to the laundry room. Both rooms were closed off, and there was only one way in and one way out of that laundry room. Me and the little girls were just talking and laughing and so on, and then we heard footsteps in the kitchen and going into the laundry room. We all got up and checked it out, and nothing. We all said, "This place is definitely haunted." Something in the road. About 10 years ago, my wife, who was my then girlfriend, we'll call her Teresa, was hanging out with me and my 2 nephews. Nothing exciting, just the usual weekend chill. Then I got a text from my sister around 10:30 p.m. to bring one of my nephews home so we could watch his younger brothers. My wife offered to do it so that her and my nephew were going to head out. It's only about a 10-minute drive. After 20 to 25 minutes, I see headlights on at the end of my driveway. It was Teresa. I thought it was odd that she would arrive without any lights on, and shortly after the headlights turned on, the car raced up the driveway. I knew something was up. I met Teresa at the front door. She came in and immediately closed the doors and locked it. I asked her what was going on and what was wrong. She turned around, and it was a ghost, or rather, she was ghostly white. She said as she made the final bend near my house, there was something white in the road. It looked like a man crouched down in the middle of the road, holding a bag or something. As she approached it, it didn't really move, but she said that she could feel it looking at her. Once she was next to it, the car completely shut off. Lights, engine, the whole 9. Thankfully, she had enough momentum to coast into my driveway where everything turned back on. She restarted the car, drove up as quickly as possible. It took a while to calm her down, but she was finally able to relax. This was the first time that she saw something, and definitely not the last. I think this was the day that she realized that she was sensitive to ghosts and spirits. Not only that, but she gets bad feelings before she's going to see something or someone. And it's going to be pretty bad in nature when it's going to happen. Don't go into the basement after dark. About 7 years ago, one of my best friends, James, was living with his girlfriend. Sarah in an older house. It was kind of a beat-up old house in the back of a double lot, 2 houses on the same plot of land. The house belonged to Sarah's mother, and she let them live there because no one would rent it and they needed a place to live. They got most of their things in, but not unpacked yet. As James brought in a laundry basket, Sarah's mom made mention that there was a washer and dryer in the basement that worked. The only stipulation was not to do laundry after dark. James agreed, but thought it was kind of an odd request. Fast forward about a month. James had done a bit of laundry during the afternoon, but forgot to switch it over to the dryer. It's now about 10 p.m. and he decides it'll only take a second to switch it over, so he'll do it quick, despite the warning. The stairs to the basement go down about 7 steps. Then there's a landing, a left turn, and 3 more. James gets to that landing and makes his turn and watches a little boy run across the basement, from behind the furnace to behind the washer. The little boy wasn't completely solid, nor did he make a sound as he was running. James noped the hell out of there and never went back into the basement at night. This was the first ghost experience he had in that house, but just like the last story, it was definitely not the last. James and Sarah's house. Don't go into the basement after dark, Part 2. It was a random summer night, just like any other, with the exception that some of the hauntings that they had experienced were getting more frequent, and more bold, I guess you could say. James was watching TV downstairs, while Sarah was taking a shower upstairs. While James was watching TV, he saw what he thought was smoke, but in the shape of a person. It passed right between himself and the TV. He didn't give it much thought and assumed that he was seeing things. A few moments later, he heard a shriek, and then what sounded like someone running down the stairs, but only stepping on about every 3rd stair. It was Sarah, wearing only shorts and a sports bra. She bolted out of the house into her mom's house, the house in front of the lot. James chased after her to find out what was wrong. Then she finally calmed down and said this: "I finished my shower and I was laying on my back, playing on my phone with my feet dangling off the edge of the bed. I thought I heard the bedroom door creak open, and I was thinking it was you, but no one was there. Then when I felt someone grab my ankles and try to pull me off the bed, that's why I ran out of the house." They didn't stay in the house that night. Sarah actually had bruises around her ankles in the shape of handprints. That house is creepy. They told me that at any given time in the night, you can hear people talking in the empty rooms. Shadow people peering around the doorways, things move or disappear randomly. James even caught pictures of quote-unquote smoke, while there was none in the room. If I can find those pictures, I'll post them. In one picture, the smoke even has a face in it, clear as day. My experience with shadow people. In my childhood home, my mom and I lived with my grandmother, where our bedrooms were in the basement. The way to our basement was laid out, relevant later, was that after coming down the stairs, there was about 20 to 30 feet long, 15 to 20 feet wide main living area. About 10 feet along the right wall was about a 15-foot break in the wall that had a compartment, quote-unquote, which is where my bed was. If you stood in front of the compartment, the right wall was solid, but the left wall was like a half wall that led to what was supposed to be the kitchen. We used it for cat litter, by the way. And where there was an entrance to this quote-unquote kitchen with no door. From the entrance to the basement, in the back left corner were 2 doors, one on the left wall that went to my mom's room, and one on the back wall that went into the bathroom. And then in the bathroom, there was a door that led to my mom's room as well. The first time I saw it was at night. My mom worked long, late-night shifts and would frequently get home around 8 or 9. On this particular night, I was next to my bed, where I could see the whole living area, playing with my Legos. The main living area lights were on. The lights in my mom's room and bathroom were off. The door that goes between my mom's room and the bathroom was closed. It was basically always closed. As I was playing and building random things, I got this strange feeling that I wasn't alone and I was being watched. So I looked up, scanned around the room, and at first didn't notice anything until I looked more closely towards the bathroom. What I then saw was the figure of a person move in front of the bathroom door towards my mother's room, and it stopped behind the front right corner of my mom's bed. I could clearly see that this was about as tall as I was. I was a small child at the time, so maybe 3 to 4 feet tall, and had what I could only describe as wind-blown spiky hair. Not knowing what I was seeing, I freaked out and ran upstairs and watched quote-unquote old people movies with my grandmother until my mom was home. I don't remember much else from that night, other than I ended up sleeping in my grandma's room because I was too freaked out to sleep in the basement. The second incident that I remember, significant because we ended up moving my bedroom upstairs because of reasons, and my little kid brain didn't make the correlation. It was broad daylight. My mom and I were hanging out in her room, and she was teaching me to play chess. My mom's back was to the door to the living area. Naturally, if I looked past her, I could see where my bed was. As she was showing me all the pieces and how they moved and what the objective was, I got that same weird feeling that I was having before of being watched. I decided to look over towards my bed, and I saw the silhouette of a person duck behind the half wall, right where my bed was. I pointed over towards my bed and asked my mom, "Who's that?" My mom looked towards my bed, didn't see anything, and responded, "Who's who, honey? I don't see anyone there." I then told her I saw someone lay down in bed, because that was the only thing that made sense to me. She went over, looked at my bed, checked under my bed, and looked under my sheets. She came back and told me that there was no one there, left it at that, and continued teaching me chess. Years later, when I talked about both of these incidents with my mom, she told me that no, I wasn't crazy. It was just my imagination, that she saw it too on multiple occasions. I guess that would say or suggest that it wasn't my imagination. And it was not just in our house. She said at the same time she was trying her best to stay calm because she didn't want to freak me out. My worst nightmare came true. When I was just a young chap, I had these horrible night terrors, as well as reoccurring nightmares. The difference between the two being that one usually doesn't remember night terrors. I did not remember mine. Part of me is glad, but part of me wishes I could. My brother and I shared a wall between our rooms. During these night terror episodes, I would scream so loudly I'd actually wake him up. We had a decent home. The walls certainly were not paper thin. He told me during these episodes, I was usually screaming for whatever it was to get away from me. Please stop screaming in fear. Things of that nature. I'm sure you get my drift. I'm unsure if my night terrors and nightmares were interconnected. My gut tells me yes. During these nightmares, a little old evil woman would break through my window, proceed to terrorize me and snatch me from my room. I don't recall actually seeing her like a broom or anything like that, but she was an evil old lady and she stole me through my window. So of course, I rightfully named her the Witch. The Witch looked like a tiny old lady. She was hunched and had a large curve in her spine, and she carried a gnarled wooden stick that her hand would rest upon. She wore a brown robe, but it was made of really thin material. Cloak, I guess you could call it. It had a hood. She moved demonically fast, completely unnatural. Often she had a large grin on her face, but it was a grin fueled with hatred. Cannot tell you how badly she scared me. There are no adjectives in the English language that can properly convey the fear I felt when confronted by her. The nightmares weren't always the same, but they were very similar. I could never remember anything after she took me, but I somehow always knew that there was more to the dream. I know that sounds weird, but it was like the memory just went black after she took me. I remember one occasion very vividly. I remember being awake. That's what's weird. My bed was against the wall where the one window in my room was. I heard a loud buzzing and the glass to my window exploded. I can still remember the shattered glass raining down upon my skin. This was preceded by something to the effect of a whirlwind inside of my room. My memory then goes blank, and the next thing I remember was running to my mom's room, scared out of my mind. Fortunately, there isn't much more to say about that dream itself. She came, she terrorized, she took me. That was that. This is where I get to the really weird part. When I was somewhere around 8 years old, I saw her in real life. I don't believe that this was my mind playing tricks. Of course, I've considered it, but I really don't believe this to be the case. I was in Rite Aid with my mom. The store had one entrance for customers. The counter ran perpendicular with the shelves, and when you walked in, you were at the beginning of the long counter for checkout. When you walked in, if you looked to the right, there would be the first aisle down as you stepped forward. It went on just like that till you reached the other wall of the store. Perpendicular shelves to the right with the counter running parallel to the left. I went to look down one aisle and there she was. At first I thought it just had to be my imagination. That it had to just be an old lady that maybe looked like her. The thing that really solidified it wasn't even what happened next. It was when I first saw her, she was facing me and made eye contact. My stomach dropped immediately and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I turned away out of fear and she started bolting down the aisle. Not towards me, thank God, but towards the back of the store. I should add that I was on the other aisle in the back that connected to the other aisles, just like any other store. So by the time I have the guts to look at the old bitch, basically at the back of the store, I knew how fast she was moving because I could hear her stick hitting the ground. It was absolutely absurd. In the present day, I'm 6 foot 6 inches, 30 years old and male, and I'm in pretty damn good shape, and I couldn't touch this speed. I instantly knew that this was my moment. I had to figure out if this was something in reality or not. Couldn't believe it, and I still can't believe it. She took off down the aisle at the back of the store that was parallel with the one to the front of where the counter was. I was in the front still. I want to add that the way she ran was in the opposite direction of the entrance. It was toward the far back corner. I ran along the aisles and just barely caught a glimpse once or twice, and then the clicking of her stick abruptly stopped. She was gone. I went up and down the main aisle. I went to the back. I looked everywhere. She was just gone. Of course, I didn't say anything to my mom. I knew that she wouldn't believe me. I felt like, little me was insane, but it was just a daytime occurrence. So I definitely can't forget that. And that's what cemented the entire phenomenon of the witch for me. It convinced me at a very young age that there is much more to this reality than meets the eye. I've searched far and wide, hoping to find someone with a similar experience, but I haven't really had luck. I mean, as far as specificity goes, But the nightmares stopped a while after that, and they wouldn't happen again in a great while. I remember getting a little older and they were fewer and farther apart. The last I had as a kid was quite a bit different, but she was still there. I was in a grocery store, and all of a sudden I looked down the aisle, people just bagging, and there she was, staring at me with that malicious fucking grin. She looked like an absolute maniac, but I didn't turn away in fear. I stood my ground and I stared back. In my mind, I told her basically to fuck the fuck off, and I wasn't scared of her. She kept staring, and my vision zeroed in on her eyes until they were so close I could no longer see her. Then I woke up. The nightmares totally stopped after that, but they started again at another point in time. Can't recall in my childhood years whether or not I'd gotten sleep paralysis. But as I got older, around 20 years or so of age, I began having rare occurrences of sleep paralysis. Every time there would be, almost always in my doorway, it would be her, just standing there. Then she would bolt over to my bed and terrify the living fuck out of me, poking and prodding me with her bony-ass fingers while hysterically laughing like a goddamn lunatic. I hate it with a passion. I wouldn't have written this here if it wasn't for this instance in the Rite Aid. It makes me believe wholeheartedly that there's something more to all of it. Anyone can say what they want. I know what I saw that day, and it's stuck with me ever since. It forever changed my view of our reality, especially when around 25 or so I began digging into the web in search of similar experiences. I then heard of a night hag, a phenomenon shared by many throughout the ages for centuries. This isn't something I would ever talk about in real life. I've told only 2 people about the event in the store and the nightmares. It'll probably stay that way. But thank you for taking the time to listen to all this, and thank you for providing me with a group of open-minded people who believe that there's something more to all of this as well. My brother passed away, but he let me know he's still with me. My brother and my best friend passed away unexpectedly in December of 2019. It had been the hardest thing I've ever been through, and I've been through a few things. I miss him, and I always know I will, but it gave me a few undeniable signs after he passed. They all took place within 3 to 4 days after his death, with the exception of one that happened a couple of weeks after. I'm writing this post for 2 reasons. 1, I'm hoping if it'll bring comfort to those who lost loved ones, that it'll help strengthen your knowing that they're not really gone. 2, I'm hoping others will read this post and share their experiences of loved ones giving them signs after they passed. I'm going to write the events out in chronological order, starting with the first. However, I'm not going to share all of them, just a few. He went to bed and died very shortly after, sometime between 1 and 2 a.m. My fiancé and I were in our house, and we were up late as usual. It was about 3 in the morning, and we heard a pretty loud bang. We thought, what the hell was that? I walked out of the room, and there was a sign on the wall. It had been pulled off. Not only the sign, but the entire nail it was on was missing, and the sign was about 6 feet down the hardwood hallway. We've all been together 8 years, and we have that sign up the whole time. It's never fallen off the wall. We bought a house and we moved in maybe a year and a half ago, and it was one of the very first things that we put up, and it hasn't moved since. The sign had metal grooves and teeth on the back, which allowed it to grip the nail very securely. I never ever say things like this because I think maybe this never would happen, but I said to my girl, I wonder if that was your mom trying to say hi. Couldn't think of a logical explanation, and her mom passed away a year ago. Once again, not the type of conclusion I jumped to. The words written on the sign were, "Keep calm and carry on." That's the first thing that he did to let us know that he was okay. It wasn't until next that I learned that he passed that I put all this together. 2 days after he died, my mom, my fiance, and I were going through old photo albums to get pictures to make some photo boards for the service. Out of nowhere, apparently my arms begin to curl up. I begin shaking. I fall on the ground and start muttering in a way that sounded like sleep talking. They said it sounded like words, but they couldn't make it out. Obviously, they both just flip their shit and call an ambulance. I come to about 5 minutes later and I'm sitting on a couch instead of the chair, and there's EMTs everywhere. It was so weird because to me, it was like I blinked and then everything was different. I had a seizure, apparently, and the weird thing is, I never had a seizure. When I came to, they asked me questions. I was definitely a little bit out of it, and part of my recent memory was gone, but I did know what year it was and who the president was, all those questions. What's weird about this is when I came back to, all I kept repeating was, all I know is I was talking to my brother. I kept on repeating that, but said that I can't remember what we were talking about. This is pretty weird shit, in my opinion. I've heard people get regression hypnosis done to help recall memories. I'm going to look into it and try it, maybe. Maybe I did talk to him, though. Never had a seizure, as I said, and when I came to, all I knew was that I was talking to my brother. Okay, so here's one y'all will probably think is the craziest. 3 days after he died, it was night before the service. I was on my way to my dad's, and we were having a small get-together with family. I saw that I got a Facebook notification. I rarely ever go on Facebook, but the one thing I always do check is my memories. I check them every day, and anytime I catch that notification. I should have seen this post once a year the past 9 years, but the weird thing is that I only ever saw it one time. That was 9 years ago, when my brother wrote it on my wall. I haven't seen it since. Anyways, we both loved the band called Tool. They're our favorite. Have been for a very long time. He had posted some Tool lyrics on my wall exactly 9 years prior to this particular date. Another weird thing to add here is that he rarely used Facebook either, and if he ever posted on my wall besides this time, it would have been once more, tops. So I'm on my way to my dad's, and my girl's driving, and I open my memories. And this is what I see from him written directly on my wall. Fetch me the Spirit, the Son, and the Father. Tell them their pillar of faith has ascended. It's time now, my time now. Give me my wings. My jaw about hit the fucking floor. There are just so many weird things about this. 1, he wasn't religious. 2, he never wrote on my wall. 3, what are the odds? I could go on and on with my thoughts, but I'm going to spare you. I know in my heart it was him telling me that it was his time. Somehow, the universe allowed this. I've never believed things were destined to be, but this really has me questioning everything. And I gotta admit, I find immense comfort in this. Next is one that may not seem as weird to you, but it was a huge one for me. We were very connected. And excuse me for being even more woo, but I just know it was him. My girl and I got back to my house from cleaning out the apartment. She got out of the truck and went inside. I got out a minute later, and as soon as my feet hit the ground, there was 3 very loud owl hoots in a row from the woods across the street. It sounded like it was so close if it was like the owl would be sitting right at the edge of the woods. There's more to this, but I just want to add that I absolutely love all animals, but I have this weird thing about owls. Like if I could be any animal without second thought, it would be an owl. I absolutely fucking love owls.
Me too.
I've never seen one in real life, so I immediately was like, what the hell? I know you guys weren't there, but it's hard to understand, but I immediately just knew it was him. So I turned to face the woods and began talking to him. I talked for about 5 to 10 minutes. No more hooting the entire time. I talked in just those 3 so far. Then the last thing I said was, I know you're here right now, but I just want to know that you aren't going to fade away into nothing. I want to know you'll always be with me. Those were the last words. I began to cry like right after that and said it simultaneously, starting to pivot towards the door. And as soon as I stopped talking, 3 loud hoots. Hoo, 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 just like the first 3 when I got out. And as I said, I know it was him. At least I took that as him telling me that he's always going to be with me and he won't fade away. Damn it, now I'm crying again. Here's the last one I'm going to share. This was the only thing that happened in the past 4-day mark for whatever reason. This was about 2 weeks out. My mom and I were driving down the road in my car. We began talking about him. I said, Mom, just remember the words that he told us. Remember the message and the lyrics that he gave us after he died. Then we said something about feeling him around us when we talked to him. No shit, right after we said this, the car in front of me changes lanes and now I'm facing the back of a minivan that has a big tool sticker in the bottom corner of the window. I absolutely did not see this car or sticker before our little conversation. I said, Mom, holy shit, that sticker is one of the bands who wrote the lyrics about it being his time and getting his wings. We just looked at each other like, what the fuck? Then I said, see, he is with us. I highly doubt that that was a coincidence. We were kind of dumbstruck, to be honest. There's a ton of evidence to support our consciousness, that it somehow goes on without our bodies. Many have near-death experiences where they were clinically dead, yet give doctors, EMTs, and nurses and all these things facts about where they were going on to, and they had no way of knowing it. Even things that took place on different floors of the building in totally different locations. Facts people provide after an NDE are called vertical evidence. Vertical. Never heard that before. Vertical evidence. There's more of it than most would ever imagine, and certainly more evidence to support this than it takes to convict someone of murder in a court of law. There are even numerous universities now that have departments dedicated to this sort of thing, as well as evidence of past lives. Welcome to the world of Paranormal M. Subscribe and turn on notifications to stay tuned in to our captivating narratives that push the boundaries of belief. Prepare to be awed by our latest tales. The Mirror Ghost. Experienced something so fucking creepy I was an insomniac for weeks after this. I'm usually known for having a highly logical and realistic approach towards life. Hence, I was against comprehending the whole ghosts, paranormal, and supernatural experience thing. But, ever since this occurred, I've remained silent and neutral to the whole debate, attempting to observe and read and learn more. The room where this happened was previously used by my late grandmother, who had passed away around 6 months before this incident. It's important to visualize the room to understand the incident completely. The room was of a rectangular cross-section, with the entrance being in the smaller-sided one, in one of the corners. Right in front of the entrance, immediately, was an attic wooden dressing room, comprising of an old mirror and a plank and a wooden cupboard, which had mirrors attached to its doors. A double-cot bed was placed right in front of these two. I liked sleeping with minimal light and doors closed. I used to sleep facing the mirror on the cupboard, on the right edge of the bed. I was in a deep sleep when suddenly around 3:30 a.m. I got up with my heartbeat pumping high and me sweating profusely. I was feeling feverish and weak. It was an extremely unnatural vibe. These things didn't make much sense to me. I tried to calm myself down, checked the time, and decided to go back to sleep. This whole experience was around 8 to 10 seconds. Now is when things got extremely bizarre. Right before I closed my eyes, in that split second, I could see something in that mirror, the one attached to the cupboard right opposite to me. At this moment, my heartbeat jumped out of bounds. I could feel my sweat dropping down, my mind going insane by this. As I don't believe in such things, I exploded in my head, questioning everything. Something was hovering right above me, with its hands inside my head. It was made up of bones, with its head looking like that of an alien organism, with weird facial hair over an unnatural skull structure. The face was very disfigured, almost insect-like, and it was hovering in raggedy gray-colored clothing. I had to see it again to make myself sure that I wasn't just paranoid or insane. So, after 2 to 3 seconds of panic, I opened my eyes and looked in the mirror. I find it still above me with its hands deep inside my head. It was doing something. The moment it noticed me watching in the mirror, it started moving along the edge towards the dark corner which was adjacent to the entrance. Now I turn to my left and see there's nothing. I turn to the cupboard mirror and I see it hovering away. Turn back to the left, yet again nothing. Turn to the dressing table mirror again and I could see it hovering towards the corner of the room. Well, I couldn't see the same when I turned my head, so by this point, I was a shell shock. Goosebumps all over, in a complete state of panic and paranoia, moving my head left and straight repeatedly as I watched it hover to the corner of the room and vanish into thin air. At this point, I couldn't control or calm myself as I attempted to go about it with logic. It just didn't seem to make any sense. I saw that thing clearly in the mirrors while I didn't see anything outside of it. I turned on the lights and just stayed up Googling about such experiences, trying to get myself out of the panic and shock. It took me weeks to get myself sleeping normally after that. The haunting of my apartment. I might need help. I'm a 17-year-old and I live in Bangladesh. I live with my parents and 2 brothers in an apartment that we own. My parents bought it before I was born. We've been hearing sounds like heavy furniture moving in the apartment above us at midnight, and sometimes sounds of stomping in and out of our apartment since I was 4. That's what I think caused that. I know that this was just because I was a toddler. My mom asked the owners of that apartment about this, but they claimed to have never heard or moved anything that late at night. One night at around 3 o'clock in the morning, 2017, my dad went to the washroom, and he ran back asking if any of us came near the washroom or not. None of us did, and he told us to check the apartment if there's any intruder. After an hour of searching, we were sure that there was no intruder. He explained why he made us search. He was very sure that he saw a shadow around 3 feet tall, and it ran the moment my dad saw it. After a few months of this incident, my dad felt something pushed him in the washroom. In April of 2018, my dad saw the shadow again. He called us right at that moment from our room at the hour of 2 o'clock at night. This time I told everyone to be quiet and stay in my room. I turned off every electrical appliance except for the lights. It was so silent I could hear the fan from the apartment upstairs. I sat in the room my dad saw the shadow in and turned on my phone camera. I asked, "If anything's here in this apartment, please give me a sign. Can you show yourself or move the bottle over there? If you can push people, you can push that bottle. If anything's here, please give me any sign." With the corner of my eyes, I saw a black figure standing in the balcony. Our balcony is connected with 3 rooms, so it's quite a big balcony. I quickly moved my head and it was there, the shadow. The shadow was there. It was a translucent, dark human-like figure, 3 feet tall and no face. Even though it was translucent and had no face, I could feel that the shadow was looking at me. I froze for a second. Then I quickly pointed my camera at the shadow in hopes of having proof, but it ran before I got the chance to get in the camera. I ran behind it, but as soon as I reached the balcony and turned to the direction that it ran, there was nothing. It disappeared before I reached the balcony. I came back to my room and asked my dad, "Is the shadow you saw translucent?" "Yeah," he said. "Was it 3 feet tall?" Again, his answer was yes. "Did it have a face?" No, it didn't," he replied. I wasn't pretty damn sure that I saw this thing that my dad saw. I concentrated on the video, hoping I got something, but when I reached the part where I saw the shadow, my hopes of proof were gone. I got nothing. Just when I was going to pause the video and delete it, I heard a voice in the video. I can swear I didn't hear this when I was recording, and as I mentioned before, it was very quiet, and if anyone said anything, I should have heard it. In the recording, the moment I came from the balcony to the middle of the room in which I saw the shadow, in a deep voice was recorded in the video. What it said was incoherent. It was my first EVP. A few weeks later, I was in my room texting my friends and slowly felt very sleepy. It was around 3 at night, and I have some local horror podcasts downloaded on my phone, and it suddenly started playing. I paused and closed my eyes again. The podcast started playing again, and this time, I couldn't move. Suddenly, a bell started ringing in front of my door. I tried to scream, I struggled to scream, but no use. My parents are light sleepers, and it's impossible that my parents won't wake up to the sound of this loud, but no one came. The sound of the bell dimmed slowly and stopped. Finally, my throat could make a voice, and the podcast stopped. I could move again. I asked my parents if they heard anything. They were surprised to hear what happened, and they confirmed that they didn't hear anything at all. A month after this incident, everything was normal. And after I came back from school, my mom asked, "What happened last night?" I was so surprised. I was pretty sure everything was normal. My mom explained that they had heard me scream and everyone woke up and ran into my room. I was standing on my bed and pointing towards the balcony, and there was nothing. I'm surprised because I'm sure I don't sleepwalk, and I remember the exact time I wake up in the night before to drink water, so I don't remember what happened. The very next day, my something invisible grabbed my mom's head and threw her towards a wall. Thankfully, the injury wasn't severe, just a little swelling. She swore she didn't trip, and she felt something grabbed her head, but it was invisible. We almost forgot these happened after about a year of nothing paranormal happening. It was the season of mangoes in our country. Every house had at least one basket of mangoes. It was 10 at night, and I was cutting a mango, and my mom suddenly scolded me. "Why did you tell me your dad wanted a mango when he didn't?" I was shocked as I was sitting here the whole time cutting a mango, and I explained it to my mom that it wasn't me. My mom said that she clearly saw me coming into her room, and it was my voice that she heard. It was me that she saw. Yet, it wasn't me. I can't be in two places at once. After this happened, we got our apartment blessed, and nothing paranormal happened afterwards. We did some renovations, and again a week after that, my little brother saw a shadow. I told this story to a paranormal investigator, and right after he heard that, we did some renovation and he asked if we did anything with the main door or any entrance doors. We did, and he said blessing a house is like a mosquito net. We changed the doors, which means that now there are holes in the net, and now shadows can come in again. In May of 2020, I discovered long, straight scratches in my back from the top end. It's impossible for me to scratch my back like this. And one day in the middle of May, I heard a knock on my door. The door was open and there was no one standing there who could knock. A minute later, I heard the knock again, and this time, I turned to see immediately, but no one was there. The 31st of May 2020 at 3:50 a.m., My older brother ran into our parents' room and told them something grabbed his hand and pulled it. He didn't see what it was. I'll keep you updated if anything new happens. If any of you know what this is and what I can do, please leave a comment. The haunting of my apartment. Footsteps. It was the 1st of June 2020. I tried sleeping in my younger brother's room, since the charging socket is near the bed, and he sleeps with our parents. After 12 o'clock, I heard 2 footsteps. Maybe from the apartment above ours, but my bed vibrated. It vibrated as beds normally vibrate when somebody stomps near it. After 2 or 3 minutes, I heard the footsteps again. I turned on the lights, but there was nothing. I ran out of the room and filled a bottle with holy water. I came back in the room, and a few minutes after, I turned off the light. I heard footsteps again. I sprinkled some holy water in that direction, and again, after a few minutes, I heard the footsteps again. This time, I sprinkled holy water in the whole room, and the footsteps were gone. An hour or 2 went by, and suddenly I heard 2 footsteps, and my bed vibrated again. I was too tired, so I was sprinkling holy water in the direction, and I fell asleep sprinkling it. June 2nd, 2020. I turned off the lights in that room, and as I went to bed, exactly at 11:45, I heard 3 footsteps. This time, I noped out of the room and slept in my own room. I told my mom to be in that room for her midnight prayers. I made an excuse that I'll be in the room that she normally prays in. The next day, she told me she heard footsteps in the room that night. Now, I'm sure it isn't playing in my mind. I forgot to record the date and time, but this time, I tried to record the footsteps. Every night any of us try to sleep in that room, they hear the footsteps. As soon as I heard the footsteps for the first time that night, I went to my elder brother in the next room and asked if he heard any footsteps himself. He didn't hear any, so I think it isn't the apartment upstairs. I went back in the room and sprinkled holy water on the bed and on my, whenever I heard the footsteps to make sure I don't get attacked. When I replayed the recording, the noise from the fan was too loud to hear anything else. 26th of June, 2020. This night I tried to record the footsteps. Again. I turned on the AC this time instead of the fan, and I kept the recorder on. After 1 o'clock I heard the first footsteps, just like every time the bed vibrated. Again, after a few minutes I heard footsteps. I hear 2 or 3 footsteps every time. It's just the usual. To mark the time I heard the footsteps, I said something out loud after the footsteps. So when I hear the recording, I know when I heard the footsteps. My mom's phone was with me, and she had an alarm for 3 o'clock. The moment the phone vibrated, the footsteps went crazy. I heard 20 to 30 footsteps in a row. It's way more than usual. It sounded like the invisible entity was almost running around in the whole room. I sprinkled holy water immediately, and I screamed out a prayer. The pace of the footsteps increased while I was praying, and the second the prayer ended, the footsteps stopped. Nothing else happened that night. As I replayed 3 hours of recording the next day, I heard sounds of breathing or growling, or perhaps a faint voice, just when I heard the footsteps, but no footsteps were recorded. Strangely, what I heard wasn't recorded, and what I didn't hear was. In the recording, I was sprinkling holy water as the footsteps went crazy, and I heard a voice. In my language, it whispered, "What is this?" Then a normal voice, "Oh, this." After this was recorded, I started praying, and nothing unusual could be heard while I was praying. I'm 100% sure my house is haunted, and here's why. Me and my roommate moved into this place about 10 months ago. The landlord who lives above us told us this place is haunted. Our landlord is 80 years old and channels. She says she channels her higher self, as well as living people, people who passed on, and Ashtar. Okay, that's cool, sure. When we looked at the house, we saw the sauna. It has an old wooden door. But after we moved in, handprints appeared on the door, and they looked like they were dragging down. Sure, that's fine. Fast forward a little bit, and I'm in the bathroom. My roommate downstairs in his room. I hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and I wait to see if he pops up. Nope. Call him over Facebook, and I ask, "Are you upstairs?" I can hear him downstairs in the room. "No, I'm in bed, why?" I explained that I heard footsteps. I go down to his room, and later he needs to use the bathroom. The same thing happens to him. He hears footsteps, and no one's there. We stayed in the same room that night, and next thing that happened was creepy as hell. Me and my roommate were sitting in his bedroom, watching some videos and drawing. He has this old music snow globe, and he has it on his dresser. The video that we had playing was a gameplay video, and it had music box music for the background song. We thought the sound was a little odd, so we paused it, put the video back 10 seconds and played it again. Then we realized it was the snow globe that was playing. We basically shit ourselves. A while later, where we were in bed, in the middle of the night, when we both heard a bang. We didn't go see what it was because, nope. When we got up the next day, his Silver the Hedgehog pop-up figure was on the ground, with his limbs, all 4 of them, ripped off. There was a hand on the sofa, 2 feet off the ground, a leg under a blanket, and 2 just on the floor. The GameCube that we have was also opened, and the creepy thing was, the little clear stand pop figures have was unmoved and untouched. A month later, I used this filter on TikTok. It's supposed to catch ghosts. It has glowing eyes and would appear when it finds a face. I felt like something was watching me and I started to film. I walked up the stairs to the main floor and something popped up at face level. Looking like it was peeking around the corner, I ran into my room. A week ago, our landlord was out for a family thing, and we heard someone running up and down the hall at like 11 p.m. at night. We heard banging and thumping. It sounded like someone was dropping like 45 pounds. Our landlord's not the strongest and can't run or carry things. We find out later that she wasn't even home. Again, a few days ago, I was downstairs trying to find some towels, and my roommate's upstairs. He said, Rose, are you up here?" I replied with just, "Nope. Why?" Not even a minute later, I hear something loudly whisper in my ear, "Pookie," which is just a weird thing to me and my roommate say to each other. I jumped out of my skin and looked to the door, wondering if a roommate snuck up on me, but he was upstairs, still in the bathroom. 2 days ago, I cleaned the bathroom. All was good. Like, I was proud of that room. Yesterday, we found a dead spider on the dresser. Today, all the legs were ripped off and placed around it. We constantly feel like we're being watched, and we always hear footsteps. Have you ever felt like somebody is giving you a death glare? You can imagine it. You can feel it. But when you look around, no one's there. That's how we feel a lot. When we come home from work, we can feel it looking at us through the window. But we're moving soon, and it's starting to get worse. We mentioned moving before the whispering in my ear. I don't know if it wants us to stay or go. Phone call from recently deceased father's phone. This happened around June of this year. It was the latest of things that's happened to me and my family in the last 2 years. I posted about something I saw in my grandmother's house a few months ago. Still not sure what it was. My father died late last year. He wasn't feeling well, and that was pretty uncharacteristic of him, as he was known for being in shape and not really looking his age. He was then diagnosed with late-stage cancer, then passed away a month after. It was too sudden. My family and I still struggle to accept how quick it was, especially to somebody like him. My mother wanted to keep her and my father's tradition of traveling to his homeland every year. Went alone with a bit of his ashes. I stayed home to help out my brothers with their grandmother. Everything was going fine. A day later, my mother calls me and asks if we called her on my father's phone. I asked my brother about this, and he was just as confused as I was. He went to my parents' room and dug out my father's phone. It was bone dry, and we had to plug it in to even turn it on. With my mother still on the phone, we told her. My mother's a believer, unlike me, so she accepted it. I like to think that it gave her some comfort. Again, I can't explain it. Short of my mother lying, which she would never do, especially with stuff about my father. There's no other reason that I can think of that explains why my mother received a call from my father's phone. Talking about these experiences is somewhat therapeutic, though. A lot more stuff has happened. My skeptical mind keeps trying to explain these things. Some I can, others like this and the post before I just can't. I might post more of those instances if the mood strikes. Cross-country hitchhiker premonition. This happened in 1993. My girlfriend, 22, and I, 21, drove across country to visit some colleges that we were looking at graduate studies during spring break. We didn't have much money, so we had an arrangement where one person would drive and the other person would sleep, and we would trade places, thus avoiding hotels and minimizing the time it takes to drive so many miles. I was sleeping, girlfriend was driving. It was 3 a.m. and we were heading east on 90 in Montana, traveling through the Crow Reservation. My girlfriend woke me up. She said it was urgent. She said that she had a strong feeling that she had to pick up a hitchhiker. It was dark and we were traveling 70 miles an hour and there was no hitchhiker. I was not happy to be woken up, and I explained that 1, waking me up at 3 a.m. impedes my ability to drive for my shift. 2, it's 3 a.m. and there's no hitchhiker. 3, picking up a hitchhiker is absurd. And 4, a strong feeling is irrelevant if there is, in fact, no hitchhiker. Did I mention that there was no hitchhiker? I felt secure in my argument, you could say that. And she felt secure in her feeling that she had to pick up a hitchhiker. It would seem that we were at an impasse. I thought my girlfriend was illogical and absurd. This whole time we were driving 70 miles an hour, and it was low visibility because of the dark, and the headlights only illuminate so much, so there's no way that we could have seen. There ahead on the side of the road was a hitchhiker. He had a van on the side of the road. My girlfriend stopped. I didn't say anything because I had hinged my whole argument around there being no hitchhiker, and here they stood at 3 a.m. on the side of the road. We picked him up and drove into Wyoming. Our car stopped working. It just lost power and we went to the side of the road. The 3 of us hitchhiked, but ultimately a police cruiser picked us up. We ended up going to the hitchhiker's house in Sheridan and camped out there while our car was towed in, manually using a rope, I might add. And they fixed the Ford Escort wagon with a vacuum leak. I mean, to think a piece of bubblegum could have fixed the problem. But when the car was fixed, we were on our way again. Just the occasional visitor. My family has a little cabin in the Wooded Hills of New York, southern tier. Most of the time, it's an amazing place to go and relax in nature. No bad vibes or dark pasts to be found, at least as far back as we know the history of the land. Thing is, if you spend the night and get very lucky, you'll get to hear a visitor on the porch. If you're even quote-unquote luckier, that visitor might make their way inside and have a walk around the kitchen. While nobody has ever seen or even had the faintest trace of whoever or whatever stops by, the loud heel-toe clomping of heavy boots pacing back and forth along that length of the porch is hard to miss. It's also very easy to replicate. Basically, anyone with a pair of boots can take a slow, deliberate walk and sound exactly like our guest. Thing is, this cabin is up on pylons to stabilize it when the ground moves in the winter, and the floor is very shaky and bouncy. You can feel a person walking, especially if they're clomping about in boots. There isn't the slightest vibration when the footsteps start outside, or inside for that matter. Now, my father and I are, you could say, the skeptical type. We need to try all the mundane things that could possibly make a noise before we admit it's something paranormal. Thing is, this has been happening for longer than I've been alive, and not a single person has been able to replicate it. Nothing on the porch blowing in the breeze sounds like boots, and they certainly don't move from one end of the porch to the other. The gutters are secure, and someone would have seen an animal by now, and of course, it only happens at night, which I used to think was a ghost hunting show cliche, but I guess it is what it is. Physical interaction. I'm usually a skeptical person, but I've had experiences which I can't explain. One of them happened last summer when I was visiting family in the UK. They were renovating their house, which is about 350 years old, and almost every part of the house had been demolished and transformed into a modern home, except for the entryway, which remained the only part of the original structure. The entryway is connected to the kitchen and has one of those doors which has two parts, where it's basically in half and you can open the top and the bottom. I was stirring my coffee in the kitchen. Everyone had left the house for personal errands. And while stirring, I suddenly got this inexplicable feeling where you feel like you're being watched. I could almost hear what sounded like walking on gravel, which was outside the entryway. I thought maybe that one of my cousins were home and I was expecting them to walk in at any second, yet they didn't. Things then got suddenly quiet. Even the birds stopped chirping. It was almost kind of like I zoned out. I'm not sure how to explain it, but after zoning out in silence for about 4 seconds, I heard a very loud and sudden bang. I looked over towards the source of the noise, and the entryway door's top was shaking and swinging outward. I went over to it, peeked outside. Nobody. I looked around for something which could have maybe fallen and hit it. Nothing. Nobody was home, no cars were in the driveway. No large animals around either. The birds then began chirping again. Their house isn't on a public road, it's in the countryside. What's weird is that both parts of the door were shut, and although it opens both ways, you'd have had to hit it from the inside for it to have swung outward like it did. My 7-year-old saw something that terrified her. Help? Okay, so first off, I come from a long line of witches. My mother and a couple of my siblings see things as well, and I grew up on the East Coast in multiple haunted houses, and I've had endless paranormal experiences, to the point where even seeing an occasional spirit barely bothers me anymore. My kids also see spirits, especially my oldest, a 9-year-old girl. I've also basically been interested in cryptids and crime and a lot of strange things ever since I was little, way before it was quote-unquote cool. Anyway, I mention that because I really know my cryptid stories, and I have no idea what the hell my kids saw, so I'd like some opinions. Anyways, I'm now in the PNW, and I've seen weird things here, but less spirits than the East. So tonight, my daughter went across the house to the bedroom that I keep as my office, which has tons of clothing and stuff to list on eBay and mailing supplies and things like that. It's a mess right now. I threw clean comforters in there that I washed so my cats and dogs don't lay all over them or knock them on the floor. One wall is made of 2 huge windows facing our front. Anyways, my youngest, my 7-year-old girl, went to grab a comforter out of there to bring up to me in my bed. Because I was changing the sheets for us to go to bed soon, she was gone for like 15 minutes or more, and I was getting annoyed because I wasn't sure what was taking her so long and why she wasn't saying anything when I kept calling out to her. I just wanted to make sure that she was grabbing the comforter. I finally was about to go check, since I'd put all the sheets on and all that stuff already, and she comes screaming and crying into my room, absolutely losing it, crying so hard she's shrill and red-faced. I couldn't even understand what she was saying. I asked if she was okay, and she said no. I thought she got hurt and asked if she fell down. She shook her head no again. She finally told me what happened after trying to calm her down for a good 3 or more minutes. She said she saw something watching her through the big windows. We have had 2 break-ins before. It's not a very safe area, so I immediately started to freak out and asked if it was a man, because I'd call to the police and get my gun. She said no, it isn't a man. I asked her again who was looking at her. She said it was as tall as a man, but reddish pink, like it had no skin, and had no face, and had hands but clumps for feet. She kept telling me that he had no face and no ears and not even a bump where his nose should be, and he was standing at the window, twitching, and that she got tangled up into the comforter and was on the floor crying, scared to move or yell. Until she finally jumped up and ran, got her headphones tangled in the door, and the thing ran by the window, and she abandoned them. I checked, and they are tangled in the door. She ran from me. I asked her if she was crying and freaking out. So she was screaming at me not to go in there, so I didn't. I ran across the house and got my 9-year-old and brought her into my room to sleep as well, because I'm unnerved. She was 100% serious about what she saw and would never make something like that up, especially not with the kind of terror she had. Does anyone know what the fuck looks like that? A raw hamburger Slender Man, I guess? I'm weirded the hell out and I really don't want to sleep now. I was attacked by something dark in my dreams, and I'm convinced an angel or something saved me. When I was about 5 or 6, Dad had enough of me climbing into their bed at night and told me that day I was to stay in my own bed from now on. He was not a great dad to have in the first place, and so any experience with him was traumatizing for a young girl. I had gone to bed, and a short while later, I began to have the most horrific dream of my life. I still remember it 30-ish years later. I awoke in the dream to terror, blood everywhere, on me, on the walls, the floor. Blood was splashed like a murder scene from Dexter. I knew my entire family had been murdered, and I could sense the haunting being near me, wanting to hunt me. It wanted me. I could sense it in my dream. There was a feeling of malice and a sense that I was the prey. Feelings that still haunt me to this day. I sensed that I could not let this thing touch me, but that it already had its claws wrapped around my soul. It did not have me yet, but I felt like I was in serious danger. This is when I became aware that I was in a dream. You see, I know that I'm a sensitive. I was born vulnerable. I sense emotions in others, and often sense bad things and some good things when they're near. But I digress. Back to the story. With a sudden awareness that I was dreaming came the ability to create things inside my mind. Dad and I had a conversation about lucid dreaming because I would constantly climb into their bed at night due to nightmares. Unfortunately, that also brought the awareness that I was stuck inside my dream, inside my very mind. This obviously caused more terror and adrenaline to flood my psyche. I was in full fight-or-flight mode from this thing that very clearly wanted to do something very bad to me. So I ran, hid, and played tricks to think I was in one place when I was in another. But where is a 6-year-old child going to hide from some ancient evil, especially one that has already gained access to the vulnerable, newly emerged sensitive that doesn't even realize she has this new ability? I was absolutely terrified and had nowhere to go, and the thing was exceptionally strong. This went on for quite a while, and I could feel the dark being getting closer to that part of me that would be open. It would be opening the final lock, if you will, into my soul. I remember thinking, where could I go that it wouldn't find me? I was beginning to panic. I could only fight intrinsically for so long. I was using my abilities inadvertently when I took control of the dreamscape. But that would only hold the dark being for so long. With its experience, age, and powers of its own, it was only a matter of time. Plus, it could just come back the next night and try again, right? Suddenly, the dream simply vanished, and I hit REM. I know, abrupt, right? I've always been a light sleeper, especially for any type of light source, so I was out. When I stirred awake to a brilliant white light surrounding me, I was folded against someone's chest and held in their arms as they walked down my home's hallway to my parents' room at the end. I just saw enough to see where I was, that I was safe, and then I was out again. This new being must have sensed that I was awake and could see them because I was overwhelmed by sleep again, and I don't remember making it to the end of the hallway, let alone being placed in my parents' bed. Right next to my mom, literally almost into her very arms. I awoke to my mom's blow dryer the next morning, had no idea how I got there. When Mom and I talked about it, she voiced to me that she had seen the glowing being as well. That night she had mistaken it for my dad. But when she asked him, he stated he had been asleep all night and hadn't gotten up for anything. We were shocked, to say the least. I actually just recently realized that I hadn't told my mother the first half of the story, and she only had a partial picture of the entire encounter. There were 2 beings that night, one of dark and malevolence, one of light and joy. The second probably saved my life. I'm not certain that my powers were manifesting that week, but because I was so young, I was unable to protect myself. Adults generally develop a natural barrier over time, but I was vulnerable. That thing saw an opportunity in my new abilities and thought to take my soul while it could. I was especially vulnerable as I had just lost my baby sister to drowning very recently, a terrible tragedy that likely triggered the activation of my abilities. I don't adhere to Christian values or beliefs anymore. Having grown up in the church made me decidedly non-Christian. But I can't deny that this very real experience happened to me, especially since I was not the only person to see one of these beings. Mom believes it was Jesus, but I'm more inclined to believe it was just our family guardian that I've seen and felt over the years, many times beyond this first encounter. Who's really to say? all I can do is share the story. Write it down as a true experience from my personal history and share it with you, that both types of energy are out there. Whether you believe me or not, it's your choice. Some of it does sound crazy. Oh, this silly woman thinks she's got some psychic abilities. The story is obviously fake. Feel free to be a skeptic. I'm kind of one myself. I have a degree in psychology. I realize how it sounds. All I can say is this really happened to me and my family, and remember, I also have a corroborating witness, so... Something woke me up at 4 a.m. and might be related to several events that happened before. This event happened in the middle of last half of last year of 2022 and the middle of the first half of this year, 2023. Here's the background story. I, Mike, am a student in the Polytechnic of Port Dickson, Malaysia. I was living in a house with 6 of my classmates in a nearby, somewhat remote small town of Pasir Panjang in the same district. We're used to commuting to our college using several roads with a stretch of about 10 kilometers, which runs in the middle of the forest and an oil palm plantation. The road had no road lights. We depend on our high beams when using that road at night because we literally can't see anything beyond 20 meters. I have a bike which I use to commute from place to place, just like the other 5 of my classmates. One guy had a car, which we often go carpooling on too. Now, on to the first story. 2022. Me and 5 of my mates went out to eat at night after a hiking trip to a nearby hiking spot on the weekend, leaving one guy, and let's call him Chad, at home because he was just sleeping. While we were returning home from eating outside, we received a text in the group chat that we made for us, and it was from my friend back home saying something like, "What time will you come home?" It felt lonely in this house because Mike is still sleeping in his room. It was weird because I was in the car with the rest of the housemates, so I replied, "I'm not in the house, bro. I went with them." He was silent after that until we reached home. After reaching home, we opened the door and saw him crouching in a fetal position by the staircase in the living room with a scared expression on his face. We all were about to ask what was wrong, but he told us what happened. He said he saw me sleeping on the floor in my room, feet facing the door with the lights and fan off. He didn't think about anything at first until he got my message in the group chat. He realized that it was not me that he saw, and his stomach dropped upon reading my message. He even went to check my room again to make sure nobody was in there, and nobody was. We were joking around about him and even knocked on my room's door to let myself know that I'm going in. We didn't take him too seriously, just to calm his nerves down. We don't have trouble sleeping that night, but I'm sure he didn't get any sleep. A few weeks go on, and one day when I was downstairs with one of my housemates doing assignments while waiting for my other housemates to arrive from eating outside, I noticed someone walking barefoot outside the gate. The gate was open, so I had to look and analyze the person walking. It made footstep sounds, but something felt off. So I went over to have a look. I opened my door and walked to the gate to see, but the man was gone. I was curious, so I walked in the same direction as I saw it walking and looked along each road at the four-way. The person was gone. I was really quick judging from the time that it took me to reach the outside gate, maybe 10 seconds. I went back inside to tell my housemate who's doing assessments about what had just happened. Fast forward a few weeks, and I was riding my motorcycle alone through the dark road after eating outside with my mates. This time, I'm the only person, the only one not in the car with them. And midway, there was an intersection, which was the only lit up part of the road, and I was going to switch lanes. So I looked at my side mirror to make sure that there were no cars behind me so I can safely merge. but I noticed a reflection of a person in a white cloth on my back seat waving in the wind. I was wearing all black at that time. I didn't think of it too much because I'm more concerned about my safety on the dark road. As I went deeper into the road, the reflection became darker and darker due to the absence of light in the area, so I kept on riding home without much thought. But as I was arriving home, I parked my bike outside the gate and looked at my bike from afar. I didn't want to open the gate because I didn't want anything that followed me to come inside with me, so I waited for my friends to arrive before making a decision. I told quote-unquote it to go away and to not follow me, but I don't know if it worked. I was having cold sweats and chills at that time. As my friends arrive, Chad asked me what was wrong. I told him everything that happened like the story above. He told me to calm down and advised me to tell it to go away and to not bother us. I did just that and went inside like normal. No nightmares nor disturbances that night, so I believe it was all fine. Ever since that day, I'm getting more and more paranoid when riding my bike at night. I noticed this particular smell when riding. It smells like flowers, but it was unpleasantly fragrant. Fragrant. Feels like you're smelling someone with perfume up close. But the smell don't come every time that I went through that road, though. Another day I went through another road that led to our home. It's been a couple of weeks since I last smelled that fragrant smell. Until that moment, I felt like something was wrong, and I said out loud in my full-faced helmet, "Do not follow me." However, at that moment, I didn't see anything behind me in my side mirror. It was getting annoyed at that point. Or perhaps I don't know. I don't even feel scared of it, nor threatened. It just feels like you're being played. We then went on semester break, which I attended a camp for a month and returned back to the same house the next semester. We didn't have any encounters for a good couple of months from the beginning of the semester, until one day that I was sleeping downstairs in the living room and was woken up by a voice that seemed to mimic the voice of Chad. Wake up, Mike. I thought something bad had happened, so I opened my eyes. But to my vision, the whole living room is dark, with the exception of our porch light shining through. I did saw someone tall standing over me, but I thought it was Chad who woke me up. So I asked him, "What's wrong?" But I didn't get a reply. I then looked at the thing standing over me to see if it's really him. It was really tall and dark, but I couldn't see a face since it was dark and I just woke up from sleep. I then realized something is off by the unusual length of delay in getting a response. So I told it, "Don't fucking bother me, I'm sleeping," then rolled to my right and closed my eyes. I then heard footsteps at the staircase. It was not like somebody going back up to their room, but instead, the footsteps sounded like it was going up and down the stairs multiple times. I got annoyed by this and looked at the staircase with the intention to yell at whoever was playing at the staircase. But there was nobody there. The sound of footsteps were still there and continued for about 5 minutes. Then my friend's watch alarm sounded, which then I knew what time it was. The watch showed 5 a.m., so this incident happened at like 4+ a.m. I told my housemates everything in the morning. Until today, I do not know what entities were these things that hitched a ride behind me. The smell and the tall figure calling my name and waking me up. All I knew was what I saw, what I heard, and what I smelled, and that I felt them. Might need to taste them to have the complete experience of the 5 senses. Feel free to speculate what could be the entity that I encountered, or how it might be related, or not. Ask Reddit. When I was a sophomore in college, I got a knock on my door. I'd just gotten off the phone with my girlfriend, who had been lecturing me on how I was a dick and didn't do anything nice. By the way, this is integral to the story. I answered the door, and there was a guy who gave me a story about how his wife was in labor in a city about an hour away, and he needed a ride to his friend's house so he could borrow his car. Normally, I would have laughed and slammed the door in his face, but due to the lecture from my girlfriend, I decided today was the day I begin being the nice guy. I agreed to give the guy a ride. He seemed nice enough. We talked about basketball and video games, and he had to drive really far off to a remote apartment complex that was still under construction. Weird, but I went along with it. When we get there, he directs me to park in an area really far off. Then he starts going on about how he needs money, too. I figure, you know what? I've gone this far, I might as well see this good deed through. I give him a $10 bill. Then he goes on about how that isn't enough to get where he needs to go. What the hell? I give him all the money that I have, including the change in my car, which was like $46. He gives me a strange look, and then a weird silence where it seems like he doesn't know how to react. Then he gives me a really genuine thank you and gets out of the car. I go home and go on with my day. About an hour later, there's a knock on my door. It's a cop. I answer, and he asks me if I've seen this guy. He shows me a picture of the guy I gave a ride to. No mistaking it. It was him, same hair, same neck tattoo, and same gold teeth. I say, yeah, I just gave him a ride like an hour ago. The cop looks like he just saw a ghost. Then he proceeds to tell me about how this guy is wanted for 3 murders. His standard procedure is to go door to door until he finds someone who's stupid enough to give him a ride. Then he leads them to a remote location, pulls a gun, executes them, and steals their car. It's extremely ironic that being nice almost got me killed and probably saved my life at the exact same time. Need help identifying egg-looking entity. This is going to be a long one, so buckle up. Title might sound ridiculous, but I'm being 100% serious. Also, please excuse any errors since English isn't my first language. You're excused. I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, and that's where I spent most of my life. I moved to a different country at 16 years old. This happened when I was about 8 or 9. Little disclaimer. At the time, I was really into all things supernatural, like many kids are. I was constantly reading about ghosts, aliens, vampires, you name it. That, and the fact that my father was being emotionally and physically abusive to both myself and my mother, parents are divorced shortly after, makes me kinda doubt that what I saw and felt wasn't actually created by my brain. Nevertheless, I'm 1000% sure it was not a dream, and I haven't experienced anything like that ever again, even in the most stressful, painful, and difficult moments of my life. I was in my room in our little flat in the center of the city, lying in my bed, lights off, playing with my stuffed animals, preparing to go to sleep. Not sure what hour of the night it was, but it must have been pretty late, since my parents had gone to bed already. I was facing the wall. My bed was placed against it, and on the opposite wall there was a window, under which stood my table and an office chair. I was calm, sleepy, consumed by my own thoughts. Suddenly I felt an incredibly, intense sense of terror, as if there was something sinister in the room behind me, staring at me. It was so intense that I couldn't even find the courage to turn around and look at it. So I didn't. I laid with my eyes closed, heart pounding, until I finally managed to fall asleep. But the very next night, it happened again. Same scenario, except this time I was facing the room. The edge of my bed was pretty tall to stop me from rolling off of it in my sleep. So I still couldn't see whatever was there. But just like the first time, I felt its presence, and I was terrified. But my curiosity got the best of me, and I raised my head to take a look. Floating in the center of the room, right above my chair, was something I lacked the vocabulary to describe with one word. It looked like a vaguely rectangular thing, roughly 2 meters tall, 1.5 meters wide, give or take, and it was glowing softly. It had a bright yellow center, also vaguely rectangular, and the rest of it was white, kind of like an egg. If I had to describe its texture, I would say it looked like a mix between a cloud and the surface of a body of water in constant motion. That's why I said its shape was vague, as it was constantly changing slightly and didn't have any sharp edges. The color also wasn't uniform, with some parts more opaque than others. Now that I've reread my probably very confusing description, it kind of sounds like I'm describing a portal, but it didn't feel inviting in the slightest. It felt like an independent entity with a mind of its own, and it felt hostile. That said, I looked at it for only a couple of seconds before I plunged my head back into the pillow, just trying to hide behind the edge of the bed, and I closed my eyes. I don't exactly remember what happened after that, but what I assume and hope would happen is that I fell asleep after a while. Just like on the first night. It's been over 10 years now. I haven't seen or felt it again, and I really hope it stays that way. I still think about it from time to time, though. What was it? Was it watching me? Was it trying to make its presence known? And most importantly, where is it now? Haunted Doll's Ghost. This happened probably half a year ago, but I didn't have this account back then, and just didn't think to post it here, but I think it's worth sharing anyway. So I'm a 19-year-old male, and I've been living in a small apartment for a while now, alone. I collect secondhand porcelain and clown dolls, and there's only one of them that's been showing me peculiar acts. She's a porcelain doll, my only non-clown doll. I bought her since she looked almost sad. I don't know how to explain that. I take a pretty good care of all my dolls. I clean them and keep them in a showcase. First weird thing that happened was that she had moved. She usually is facing forward, but she had turned towards my apartment's door, which is on her right. Another weird thing that she's done is that her eyes have been following me. I thought at first that I probably didn't see correctly, and also that I myself had moved the doll without realizing. But I think my mind changed after the ghost encounter. I was drawing, watching videos on my laptop, when I noticed something weird on my left, near my bed and the showcase. There's a curtain that separates my bed and the showcase and the bookcases that didn't hide my bedroom all the way. I live in a one-room apartment, so my bedroom and living room is the same room. The curtain brings some privacy. I turned my head to look, as if to convince myself that there wasn't anything creepy, and instead, I saw a small, probably around 6 or 8-year-old girl. She had long, wavy, almost blonde, almost white, long, dark dress that looked old. I didn't see clearly since I was so surprised and kind of scared, to be honest. But the ghost was vivid. I could see half of her dress since she was only peeking, but I could see her feet and head from behind the curtain. I remember she had a sort of scared and unsure look on her face. But when I tried to look again, she was already gone. I wasn't that scared after it, just cautious and shocked that I saw what I saw. I've been taking good care of the doll, which I know was the ghost's doll. I sense a connection between them, and none of my other dolls have shown any paranormality. I haven't seen her since. I hope she's okay, either roaming around here or resting finally, I don't know. I hope my text is good. English isn't my first language. And please tell me if I broke any rules. I read them, but I'm always a bit unsure about posting new subreddits and stuff. I also tried to add a photo of the doll too. Ask Reddit. I met a man once who knew everything about me and said that he jumped off the San Francisco Bridge many years ago, even though I met him in Tybee Island, Georgia. Story. True in parentheses. This has haunted me for a long time. I was about 19 or 20 at that time, and I was living in Savannah, Georgia. I drank a lot. I had a crappy fake ID, too. I worked this terrible job as a grunt laborer. The kind where you go to those temp labor agencies like Able Body or Labor Finders, and I'd show up at 4 a.m., work until 5 p.m., and drink myself to sleep after only taking home maybe $60 for the day. I was supposed to go to work this particular morning, but I decided to skip. It's a labor agency. They'll just find somebody else. I told the girlfriend to tell her that I want to go to the beach, Tybee. I had already started drinking. She comes over, we hop on my big, ugly van, pack up some rods, and head to the beach. I decided to have a drink across from the beach at this little bar. This is where the story gets interesting. Shortly after ordering my drink, I get this really weird feeling. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings. The door opens and I see this guy walk in and out of my peripheral vision. There was a seat between me and my girlfriend, but the bar was empty at like 9 a.m. He could have sat anywhere else. Yet, he chooses to sit right between her and I. Then he starts doing these things with his fingers. The bar top was reflective, and he takes his fingers like two little legs and starts just walking with them, skating with them on top of the counter. I guess this isn't something out of the ordinary, but I took notice because I was in school and I did that all the time. I pretended I had rollerblades on my fingers and that I was skating around my desk. I hated school, and I was always distracting myself. So I became kind of mesmerized for some reason. That's when he looks at me, and in this really kind of Germanic or Nordic accent, he says, "I notice you're a man who pays attention to detail. I'm always a man who pays attention to detail myself." Now, before I continue, I have to describe this guy. He had this short, spiky hair that was bleached at the tips, kind of like a late 90s style. He had really expensive clothes on, like a nice Prada leather jacket, nice designer jeans, really nice boots. He seemed like the kind of gay guy with an awesome fashion sense and really distinctive taste. I always remember this, because I think to myself, some weird homeless crazy guy couldn't have afforded those clothes. Anyway, the other thing that stuck out was his eyes. They were a piercing gray. It reminded me of like a husky's eyes, but his pupils just stayed this disturbing pinpoint size. They were either just extremely small, which caused his look to be kind of terrifying. His teeth were normal, right? But not at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. They were sharper than they should be, as if they were filed slightly. His hands were normal, but his fingernails were slightly long and pointed, as if he deliberately did it. He kept licking his teeth too, as if he were salivating. The thing about this guy is that you look at him and everything seems normal, but off at the same time, so you're questioning if you're crazy for thinking this. This guy then begins to start talking about the relationship between me and my girlfriend, but really strangely. He's talking about how beautiful she is and how I should pay more attention to her. I was kind of a dick to her. Shortly after he began talking like this, I almost had this knowing feeling come over me, like I knew this guy was not human. I look at my girlfriend and say, "You need to leave." She just kind of looks at me like she knows too. Without a word of protest, she gets up quietly and leaves. Later I learned that she went next door to go get a coffee. That's when this guy literally says to me with the utmost confidence, "You were supposed to go fishing today." He points at the beach across the street. "If you had, I would have drowned you in that ocean." And I shit you fucking not, he hissed. Again, for some reason, this overwhelming calm had come over me. I just ask, "Who are you?" He answers back with this crazy guttural language like "Ak back," but it was really long. It sounded Arabic or Hebrew or something. And I just, for some reason, without skipping a beat, I have no idea why it was so calm to this day, I ask, "Say it in a way I can understand." He says, "You can call me Jimmy C. I jumped off the San Francisco Bridge years ago, and we've been watching you." From there on out, he never referred to himself as me or I, but only we. The conversation became something very strange after this. He was saying things like, "We see you taking a bath. We wish we too could feel the warmth of the water and the comfort of the steam," and other stuff. He kept buying me drinks too, specifically whiskey sours. It was like he had an endless supply of money. He smoked Marlboro ultralight cigarettes. After I don't know how long, because I lost sense of time, I told him I'm gonna leave. I walked next door to get my girlfriend, and she's stone silent. We start driving home. Don't say a word. Then I just ask, "Do you know what that was?" She just says, "That was a demon." This girl had parents that were scientists. She was really analytical, completely non-religious. That was the first thing that she said out of her mouth. Now, I don't really say this part before because to me, this is the most important aspect of the story, so I'll say it now. Because it's what's happened after this that screwed me up for fucking years. The last thing this Jimmy C guy said to me before I left is this: "Look at my car." I look outside. I see one of those newer Volkswagen Beetles. It was white. "What does the license plate say?" I look at the plate, and it literally says "Fierce." He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "The next time you'll see me, I'll be driving a black Mercedes, and the license plate will say Utopia." Stupid, right? That night, I was still calm. I don't know why. I felt like that guy in the Office Space after his hypnotherapist died right in front of him, and he was weirdly zen. But my girlfriend started having terrible nightmares of this guy's head just staring at her in her dreams. Weeks went by, and that's when the encounter started affecting me. I found myself becoming paranoid about that black fucking Mercedes. Every black car I saw, I checked if it was a Mercedes, and if it was, I immediately looked at the license plate. Started doing it when I watched TV or movies as well. I couldn't stop. Now I'm going to fast forward a bit. About 10 years go by, and I'm 29. So this is just recently. And in silence, when I'm alone, when I'm drinking, I often think about this encounter. I still look at black Mercedes every time they pass, but I'm not so much anxious about it anymore as curious. And I remember that my girlfriend at the time always kept a journal. And by now, I'm pretty sure that I'm insane, but maybe I was drunk. Maybe I'm not remembering any of this correctly. After years of trying to find news articles of a Jimmy C that committed suicide on the San Francisco Bridge, looking at black cars and so on, I feel like I'd grown out of it. Yet still, I had to know. So last year, I tracked down my ex-girlfriend. We ended up on bad terms. I find out that she's a school teacher in Wisconsin, has married a woman, and is actually trying to have a child. I figured she's not gonna talk to me, but I send her a Facebook message anyway. I ask her if she can find the journal from that day, because I have to really know about these events and if they line up with mine. Sure enough, she had it, and it contained even more detail than what I remembered, because she had literally written it at the coffee shop next door right after it happened.